Hello, everyone. I think we're live. It's Joe here, dietitian. I'm with Amy, who is our amazing mindset and psychology coach, consultant. And today we're going to talk about a couple of things, but the main topic I think we'll hone in on is like how to handle holiday eating without feeling like you're missing out, without going off track, without feeling judged. These were some things, comments submitted by our clients. So we're going to look at that. If you are joining us live, make sure you say hi. Make sure you say where you're from. It's always fun to see. And please tell us if there's a tech issue, like if you can't hear someone or you can't see anything. That would be super useful as well. So, Amy, how do we start this one? I mean, I'm going to read the subject to you.
Yeah.
So someone's saying, hey, I want tips to handle holiday eating. So I guess we're talking about, Thanksgiving in the US and then obviously Christmas without missing out or going off track because they're feeling stressful or stressed out for several things. So where do we start with this topic?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my first thought is this is all about being intentional and really kind of creating a plan. Like these are challenging times to kind of stick to our goals and to stay the course sometimes because there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of temptations. And so I think one of the first things that we can do kind of going into the holidays is really be intentional, decide ahead of time, like, how do I want to respond in those moments where I am tempted? Who do I want to be in those moments when I'm tempted? I think it's also super important to really kind of keep our values at the forefront as we're going into the holidays, to really know why we have these goals. Like, it's not about the goal specifically, it's more about what happens when we achieve that goal, right? What's really exciting to us about where we're headed. And if we can keep that at the forefront of our mind, I think it helps compensate for some of the lack, right? Like, otherwise we're coming into this experience with, oh, I'm going to be missing out on X, Y, and Z. But if we're rooted in our values and what's most exciting to us about where it is that we're headed, then we can come to it with this place of, hey, this is what I'm gaining, versus like focusing on what we're missing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So those are, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, finish what you're saying. So that's kind of where you'd start.
Yeah, that's where I would start. I think the other thing is it's going to be really important to nurture motivation during the holidays. And so some ways in which we can really nurture our motivation, first and foremost, is what I just said. It's being kind of rooted in your values and keeping those at the forefront of your head. So whatever you need to do to make sure that you're connecting with that on a kind of a daily basis as you're navigating these experiences, I think is really important. And then I think having just realistic expectations as well, making room for treats, like places to indulge. Maybe it's that you're bringing your own, but you want to have space for that so that you're not feeling totally deprived. And then I think remembering too that this isn't about going in and being perfect, that this is about continuing to make progress. If I expect myself to be perfect as I'm going into the holidays, I feel like that's a lot of pressure. It's like I feel like I'm just setting myself up for failure. So if I can go in with, I want to continue to make progress during the holidays, that feels more doable to me. I don't feel like I'm in a pressure cooker and setting myself up for failure. I feel like I have wiggle room. And the funny thing is like psychologically, like when we feel like we have wiggle room, we're less likely to veer from the course because it just doesn't feel like it's never going to happen. Does that make sense?
Yes. So we say following a diet 100% is not perfect. It's prison.
Yes.
So that's kind of the one-liner I like to keep top of mind. So I'd rather you follow it 70% perfect than 100, because 100% is not sustainable. It's not realistic, and it never works.
Yeah.
And certainly going with that frame of mind in the holiday period. Can we circle back? Who have we got here? Hi, Judy. And it's Karen. Karen, that's from San Francisco. How's it going, guys? If you guys get any questions, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to have a little back and forth with you guys. Now, circling back, the first thing you said was like keep your values front of mind. Did I say that correctly? So
Yeah.
like, what does that mean exactly? Or can we have an example or something like that?
Yeah. When I think about, if my goal here is that I'm eating, low FODMAP so that I can continue to manage my symptoms or continue to make progress on managing my symptoms, that's not really exciting necessarily for me. But what is it that I gain in life when I have the ability to better manage my symptoms? I'm able to connect with adventure. I'm able to connect with, like, I feel freer. I feel lighter. I feel maybe I have more social engagements, because those are important to me. Those are values. So it's adventure, it's social connection. These are the things that are important to me. These are the things that are most exciting about reaching my goals. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So it's then, how do I keep those things front of mind?
Yes, because that's what I'm gaining, right? By continuing to make progress and doing my best to stay the course within, reason. And I gain those things, and those things are what's most important to me. So if I'm focused on those things, I'm less rooted in what I'm missing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So how do I focus on those things and keep them front of mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and I think everyone has their own way of like making that something that's really present for them. For me, it's about, setting an intention at the beginning of the day. I do journal every morning with an intention of like, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up? What's important to me? And so just writing that out is important. You can also, some people like to have, maybe some keywords or phrases written on your mirror. Some people have a vision board that they're looking at and they're keeping present with them. Some people, it's just kind of that mental journaling of like waking up in the morning. Oh yeah, like this is what's important to me, and making space to acknowledge that. When we put things outside of ourselves, we're far more likely to carry through with them. And so I feel like that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Like, I tell people, like, it's when I talk to you, like in this kind of discussion now, articulating my thoughts makes things more real or concrete. And it's the same when we speak with clients. We get them to say track something or track symptoms. It's important that you express it. And it's funny you talk about journaling and stuff, because, it's like you hear about it on podcasts, and then you're talking about it, and people are like, oh, okay, like, tell me something I don't know. But it's like, that's what works. So I do it every day. This is my giant journal, and it has, like, the first thing is like, I'm grateful for today's priorities, schedule what would make today great, end of day review. The reason you hear about this sort of stuff all the time is because it works, and people who are successful with the goals that they have, whatever that looks like, they tend to do something like this. It's not only being organized, it's about getting your thoughts out of yourself.
Yeah.
It creates discipline. I think that is the most valuable thing for me, and what really this question is about.
Yeah.
Because motivation is like doing something when you feel like doing it, and discipline is doing something when you don't. So motivation will get you started, but discipline is actually the determining factor between, like, will I get from where I am to where I want to go? And exercises like this teach discipline, or allow you to practice discipline, because it's kind of like a muscle, right? The more you lift the weight, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
So to circle back, so perhaps to keep these values front of mind means some sort of journaling exercise or writing something down. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things that are coming to my mind as I'm hearing you talk, and I love your clarification between motivation and discipline. It reminds me of the book The Slight Edge. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it talks about successful people are the people who are willing to do the things that are so easy to do, they're easy not to do. And so journaling is one of those things. It's really, I mean, I think part of people's resistance is they think it has to be this long drawn out thing. I will tell you, like when I journal in the morning, it's like 5 minutes or less. Like that's my reality. It's not a huge commitment, but it's a discipline that sets the perspective and my intentions for the day so that I can follow through. So I'm reminded of that. And then there was something else I was going to say, but I think it came and went. I got so
Okay.
excited about the book of The Slight Edge. So, and what was coming up for. Hopefully it'll come back.
And also with this journaling, you don't have to be perfect. It's the same with the diet. Like I sometimes I miss days for sure, and
Yep.
I miss a lot of weekends, but I don't let that. It doesn't matter. I still show up and do it when I remember, and that all adds up and that all counts. So okay, have we got anyone else? Hi, Rochelle. So if anyone has any questions or wants to comment, please let us know. Oh, and please give us a like or something if you find it useful. It's going to help bump the video up in the Facebook feeds. So shall we move to the next topic, or is there more to cover, do you think, with this particular question? Because I'm thinking there was a few bits to it, because it was, how do I handle holiday eating without missing out or going off track? So the second thing, what was the second part you said? It was just like be realistic or allow yourself that kind of
Being
freedom.
realistic with your expectations. I think there are a few more things that are worth noting as we talk about this, and maybe we'll cover some of the other pieces. And if not, let's circle back to those. But I think another thing that can be really important to do is if you know going in that you're going to have some temptations and that this is typically a place for you where maybe your progress goes off the rails, like visualize yourself following through. Visualization is a really powerful tool. If we can start to kind of just spend a few moments like picturing ourselves, going through the Thanksgiving line or the Christmas line or however it's set up at your festival or house or whatever, and making those choices. See yourself doing that. It's a really powerful way. Once we've seen ourselves and we have that picture in our mind, it's another way that we're more likely to follow through. I was reading in a book, it was a while back, but they were talking about like a scientific study where they had people just visualizing like themselves doing bicep curls. And then they compared it to a group of people who did. And actually the people who visualized still made progress. It wasn't the same progress as the people who were actually doing the bicep. But I thought, oh my gosh, like that's just such a great testimony to how powerful visualization is. So play it out in your head, play out being successful in your head, practice seeing yourself making the choices that align with your values. And then I think if you know what's challenging, like I think part of what happens in those moments is we feel the emotions that come with disappointment or like that come with that I'm missing out. There's some emotions in that. And so being willing to kind of commit in the holidays to more fully process whatever emotions are showing up for you. Is it disappointment? Be willing to be disappointed and to see that disappointment through. I think we're in such a hurry, like we don't want to feel that. So what do? We alleviate that. We avoid the feeling of disappointment by just making the choices that we do. And so if we can be more willing to fully process our emotions, I think that's going to be really helpful. And I've shared a couple times on the calls that we've done inside the group, an acronym. And this was something I learned from a YouTube video. It was another psychologist that was sharing her kind of philosophy on how to process emotions fully. And I love the acronym STORM. STORM is just something that we can remember really quickly. I love the volatility because emotions can be volatile, so it's represented in that. But STORM is about stopping and breathing tuning into the emotion, name the emotion, see what it feels like in your body. There's a physiology to every emotion. Where does it sit in your body? Be curious about that. And then observe any thoughts that are coming up. Oh, this isn't fair. I'm missing out. And then see if you can reframe those thoughts. What would be a better feeling thought that allows me to feel still rooted in my values in this moment? And then the last part is move into compassion for yourself. Yeah, this is hard. Yeah, this does, have a spirit of unfairness, but here's what I'm gaining. And it makes sense that I would feel disappointed in this moment, but I can handle some disappointment. So I love that because I feel like emotions are a big part of the holiday experience. And if we have things that we feel like we're missing out on, we're certainly to have some emotions that surface.
So being really like slowing down, be kind. I think that circles back to be kind to yourself. Like people are mean to themselves, and it's a big problem. And it's most everyone is, where it's like the things you say to yourself or how you think about your actions later, like are things you would never say or think about your kids or your loved ones or friends, but you'll do them. You'll say these things to yourself, and it's damaging. It is damaging, and you need to. We don't even notice. We're so in it that we don't notice because we don't really stop and pause and try to kind of disassociate from that. Like you'd observe it if someone else did it to their kid, or you'd be like, "Oh, that was a bit uncalled for," but you don't see it because it's you. And you do need to stop and like awareness is kind of the first step of change of anything, and that's where we need to start.
I gotta say on that too. Sorry, just the being hard on yourself, it kills motivation. Like it totally stops it in its track. And so learning how to be kind to yourself is going to be super important if you want to stay motivated. It crushes it.
Yeah, for sure. Hi Lauren, how's it going? So I wanted to quickly say that also, I mean, this question is like, well, I need tips for eating around the holidays and not being stressed, not going off track. I think people need to also just chill out a little bit and enjoy themselves. It's so easy to get carried away, but the reality is, like, I think about it like the holidays like this. If I'm just going to calculator on my phone. If you eat 3 meals a day, in a year, you eat 1,095 meals. Now, in the holidays, you can see where I'm going with this. There might be 3 bad meals around Thanksgiving and, a couple of days before that or something. And then say you have your work Christmas party and you have 3 different Christmas things the next month. Then that's 6. And let's add another 3 around New Year's. It's 9. Let's say it's 10 really awful meals that are really off track. Well, you have over 1,000 more meals in the year. Why are you giving so much emphasis to this? What is that? 0.1% of meals. And I think that kind of perspective people just kind of lose sight of.
Yeah, I love that perspective. It gives you the permission to chill out, and relaxation. Important.
How much damage do you think you actually did? And so I think keep that in mind as well, everyone, when we talk about holiday eating, because food is more than nutrition as well. And I'm talking about, like, I'm thinking about my clients who are, either it's a gut issue or weight loss or both. But remember that food is more than nutrition as well. Humans, we've evolved around, we're social. We need to be in communities to survive. That's always been the case. And so we've built a lot of our social interactions around food. That's why we celebrate with food. Everything is around food in our culture. And so these holidays are based around food, if you think about them. And they're important parts of our lives aside from the nutrition aspect. So in terms of socializing and being healthy and happy. if we forget about food quality for a moment. So there is benefits to, you can argue there is benefits to enjoying yourself on these occasions and maybe going off track a little bit, so long as you just, you're not feeling guilty about it, because just keep in mind, it's 0.1% of the meals you're going to eat for the next year. You can't do that much damage there, particularly if you got that frame of mind, because then you'll get back on track as soon as it's done. So don't feel like you need to restrict yourself or miss out on these things.
Yeah, good points. That's such a powerful perspective. I really like looking at it from that angle. And I think it's just also like, again, it gives us the permission to relax. And as we're going into these moments, and the more relaxed we are, we do know that stress and, feeling guilt and all of those emotions that are intense, like they impact and exacerbate any gut intestinal issues that we have. So the more chill that we can be about the choices that we're making and the experience that we're going into, I think the more beneficial it's going to be for our progress as well.
Cool. And now, what if I look at some of the comments here, what if we think about this from a perspective of people saying no to eating certain things because, it upsets their stomach, but they're afraid of being judged by family members or whoever. Like, you don't want to be the person who's difficult, like, oh no, I don't eat that, or I can't eat this. But if it's genuinely something where they're like, more, I know if I eat that, it's going to ruin the evening for myself and whoever else knows. So I need to have a way to say no but not feel judged. What should people do there? Is there a way to do that? Are you even being judged, and that's kind of more playing in your head?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the first thing that comes up for me is that and then I recognize this doesn't account for the history that maybe we have with certain family members, right? Like sometimes you just know when your mother is going to be disappointed that you didn't try something, and she may be judging you. But it's also sort of a thinking trap that we get caught into. If someone is not saying that they're disappointed, like we don't need to be mind reading into that. Like it's everyone's responsibility to show up authentically and to say what's important to them. If someone says they're disappointed, we can follow that up with assertive communication. Like, I hear you're disappointed. I totally understand. Believe me, I wish I could try this, but it will wreck me. And, I'm just having to kind of honor that and look out for myself in this moment. And I think it is really important for us. This is a boundary issue. We are going to be judged. People are going to judge you in life at times. And again, we don't want to assume they're judging us if there's no evidence to support the fact that they're judging us. But even if they are judging us, we can withstand judgment from other people. That's underestimating our ability to manage being judged from other people. We need to have boundaries. It's our job and our responsibility to protect our energy and our health. Nobody else is going to do that for us. So we have to take ownership of this, just like it's somebody else's responsibility to manage their own disappointment. It's not my responsibility to manage your disappointment if I decide not to take your food. That's your choice. That's your responsibility. And every time I renege on what's important to me so that you don't feel disappointed, you don't get to learn how to process the emotion of disappointment, and you don't get to learn how to respect my boundaries. And so those are kind of the thoughts that come up to my mind around judgment.
And also, like, if someone is judging you, remember that that's a reflection of them and how they're dealing with the situation. It's not a reflection of you being the annoying person, whatever. It's actually a reflection on them, and so it's more their problem than it's yours. So don't allow it to be your problem, because it's not. I think that's important to remember. It's just like the way like some people deal with anger in certain ways, and if they took it out on you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong. It's more about, and like, because that same situation could occur to someone else and they don't get angry about it in the same way, because it's actually a reflection of how they deal with that rather than your reflection of you and your problem. So just thinking about that as well is going to help to remove some of that guilt, because ultimately you're not doing something wrong, certainly not by them, right? But you're made to feel that way, which is something I thought of. And then in terms of an actual practical tip, I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but of course, if you know you're going to a dinner or something, like bring something that you've prepared that you can eat, that you tolerate, or that's in line with whatever your goals are. So then at least you've got that option. Or bring two things. Obviously something that maybe other people will enjoy as well. But like then it's not like everyone's eating and you're there, eating a carrot stick. Right?
Yeah, that's a really good. I like that idea. Definitely, really, really practical. And I think part of what gets in the way is people feel funny sometimes bringing their own food, if that isn't tradition. But I think this is where we get to step into like ourselves and belong to ourselves first, as Brene Brown would say. It's we have to be willing to unapologetically show up, as we are. And if we have gut intestinal issues, then we need to be able to show up and meet our needs and honor that that's, where we are, and not worry about how we're being interpreted. And to me, it's a sign of strength to be able to do that, right? To be able to show up and say, yep, love everything. It looks really good. Would love to eat it, but you and I both don't want to experience the aftermath of it if I do. And here's what I've brought, and thanks for understanding. That's my favorite line. Like if I'm doing something, that I think could have the, possibility of being misinterpreted, is just kind of ending with "thank you for understanding."
Yeah.
Just to put that out there, like I need you to understand. It's just a really assertive, clear way of saying.
Yeah, you don't know them anything, so it's just like, this is how it is. The end of conversation. So this is Marnie, actually. Sure, the solution I had. So you actually beat me to it, Marnie, but I didn't even see your comment. But like the solution was bring my own thing, so that it helps. Totally does. If anyone has any more ideas like this, then please let us know in the comments. I was just talking to the host to find out what they would like you to bring for everyone. Exactly. And then you can kind of adapt it to be what you need it to be. But certainly being involved with the food prep or just bringing something is a practical thing. All right, let's change topic, because I wanted to cover two different things here. So second thing, which is very much related. Why do we want to reward ourselves with things that are not good for us, Amy?
Yeah, great question. I think I think it's multifaceted, to be honest, the answer.
Oh yeah. I don't think we have enough time but let's explore some ideas so people are at least aware of where to start.
Yeah. I think, the first really simple, and we can't really explore this or change this, but it is ingrained in us, like as human beings. I mean, if you think about using food to soothe, it's something we do with babies, right? Like when babies cry, what do? You give them a bottle. Like, so it's just part of
human nature.
And so we have to account for that. I think there's also like the cultural aspect of why we do this, right? Like we're influenced through advertisements, through traditions, like food, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's a focal point. And it's a beautiful focal point. It's not bad that it's a focal point, but there are adjustments that maybe we can make within that. But I think the most powerful thing that gives, I don't think we have a ton of control over those other two. I think the place where we have some control is that understanding, and you'll be able to speak to this more than I can, but just to touch on that, certain foods are physiologically rewarding. And so like things that are high in sugar or salt or fat, like these foods that we treat ourselves with often trigger the release of those feel-good neurotransmitters, like dopamine. And unfortunately, more so than some of their healthy counterparts. Like that's just the science of it from my understanding. they give us a feel-good surge. And the problem is the reward only lasts as long as we're eating, but that leads us to want to treat ourselves more, right? So we want to kind of repeat that behavior. So in short, like those are kind of the angles that I see. This third angle gives us a little bit more power. Like there's something that we can do, I feel like, because of the awareness of like knowing, okay, the reason I'm craving this is because it is going to give me that surge in that moment. But I also can begin to be aware that, okay, that surge is not going to last very long and it's only going to set me up to want more and more and more. So I think you have more to say about that than I do.
Yeah. Well, we can definitely visit like where should someone start in addressing this. I'm sure it's something that you talk about or quite often on our weekly calls and stuff. So, because the question specifically is, why do we want to reward ourselves with things that are not good for us? And I guess that means that's not in line with who does anyone have a solution for this? I'd be curious in the comments. Like if you find yourself trying to reward yourself with things that aren't good for you, have you come up with something that works for you? I'd be interested if you have you could write what it is in the comments, because we could talk about that. And if not, you could write no, because it'd be interesting to see how many people are stuck with this, right? Because most people, right? That's why this question was so highly voted. We got 20 votes. So why do we reward ourselves with things that aren't good for us? Because it's just hardwired human nature and physiology and the way we evolved for thousands of years, being that food was scarce for us. We didn't have a lot of food, so humans would have just died all the time basically. So we're hardwired to go for things that are calorie dense, and typically then, if we didn't have processed foods, but we had fat. So fat from animals is one thing that humans definitely needed then, but also like ripe fruit has the most nutrients in it versus an unripe fruit, which is very sour, right? It's not much going on there. You have to burn a lot of calories to digest it. So we like ripe fruit instead. And so the flavors tell us what to go for.
Yeah.
So what happens, like Amy was saying, is those neurotransmitters, it's basically dopamine, which is a hormone or a neurotransmitter, and it gets fired off at the thought of having that food, and then having that food, the act of having it. But as soon as you're done, that goes away. But the point of the dopamine is to reward behavior. That's what it does. It's the reward circuitry of the brain. So the more we like that and the more we get it, the more we go back and do that habit.
Yeah.
And so that's why things are addictive. And then you have very hard addictions, like say drug use, where dopamine is fired exponentially higher than any kind of other natural substance or food. That's not even close. Even if you read the things like sugar is as addictive, it's nonsense. Cocaine will fire like hundreds of times more. And that's why it becomes so addictive. But yes, these certain foods, these comfort foods, and we have the nostalgia associated with certain foods, and our lifetime growing up with those things, they all contribute to the dopamine that's fired. And so when I have this sip of wine or this chocolate or whatever, it's getting fired that I want to do that more. The problem, of course, is as soon as you've had it, it goes away. And then you're left where you were before you had it, which is, my brain is looking for that stimulus again. Should I just have some more? Yeah, okay, if I keep having some more over time, I can make it last for an hour. Of course, then you've been eating chocolate for an hour and it goes against your goals. And then you end up with this statement of, why am I eating this thing that is not good for me? Yeah. So knowing that shouldn't make you feel helpless. It should be empowering, because now you understand the physiology, and that is how humans were hardwired. And so there's so many ways we can go about addressing that. First of all, you don't need to not be like that. It's not like, I wish I was never like that. It's more about, well, how can we allow this to happen, but we do it in a way that fits into our goals, or it doesn't sabotage our progress. Okay, and this even circles back to then our holiday question about eating during the holidays.
Yeah.
And what you talk about, Amy, like boundaries and things. So, and then discipline, everything is like, it just comes back. And so it's complex, but it's also simple because everything is related. So when you start working on one thing, it usually has a flow-on effect. But the point being, you're doing it because of the dopamine. Other things fire dopamine as well, right? So like gambling is one, and there's lots of there's healthy habits as well. Like if you got pleasure from, like when you were a child, going out and playing in the yard, that was firing dopamine.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, what fires the most dopamine is you scrolling on this, because
Right.
it's the unexpected that keeps firing. So you don't even know what you're looking for, but you
Yes.
keep doing it, right? Or you're watching, you're watching TV and then you're also picking up your phone and not even realizing. That is the dopamine in your brain is starting to control that at a subconscious level. And you're not even looking for anything, but that's your physiology there, like plain proof. And this happens with food as well. So
I'm wondering too, I'm just thinking out loud here, but part of maybe the solution is beginning to just redefine reward. I mean, I know that they're like for the part that's within our control is like looking at like, is this truly rewarding? Because I do think fundamentally we know and we've associated like the feeling with the reward, maybe that we can alter, I don't know. I'm sort of just thinking out loud here, but do we need to create some cognitive flexibility around what is truly rewarding and what's going to give us ultimately the most amount of dopamine would probably be like, reaching our goals, getting to that place where we're thriving and we feel like we're not just surviving and like that we can go do all of these other things that do give us, and help us access that. I mean, I'm just free thinking there, but it was just a thought that came as I was listening to you.
I think for sure there's probably like research into that, or how can we shift that? But there's also like, what about timing of exposure to dopamine? So we know that if we have a saying like when it comes to goals and doing tasks, like move the heaviest stone first. So do the hardest thing first at the beginning of the day. So this is like with dopamine. If you give your brain that dopamine spike or pleasure in the beginning of the day, it looks for it for the rest of the day, basically. So if you start your day eating a bowl of ice cream, you're going to have a really hard time eating healthy that day, basically. Whereas if you save that bowl of ice cream, knowing about this relationship and why you feel that way, this dopamine relationship going on, you can have it at the end of the day or after a perceived difficult task. And then it actually can be beneficial, because absolutely you can reward yourself, and that's the way we're wired. But we need to be a bit more cunning on how we implement it in our day. And that actually is going to help with rewarding ourselves with things that aren't good for us, but in a more disciplined way or with more boundaries. But let's talk about like what can we do? So we understand now why we reward ourselves with things that aren't good for us. What can we actually start with? Because one of the big things really is like, if you can, the obvious thing is, well, can I get this dopamine in a way that is in line with my goals or has no effect on my other goals, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think definitely like figuring out what those sorts of things are for you. Like you need to know what those things are that really, allow you that feel good feeling and have those. Like I frequently will have clients just write down a list and like brainstorm, brain dump that. Like, what is that for you? Figure out what and then go through and label 1, 2, 3. Like, what are the easiest, quickest ways to get that on your list, and what are the harder, middle to harder ones. And you want to be able to have those accessible to pull on in those moments, or as often as you can. But I think, how do we stop it? I think, like you mentioned several times, is like awareness is the first step. Like if we have the awareness that this is what's playing out for us, we can be more mindful, but we also have to kind of develop our mindfulness abilities. Like to be, the more present I am in each and every moment of my feelings, my thoughts, and my behaviors, the more power I have over the choices I make. And so we have to, just like you were talking about building that muscle earlier, like we have to build our mindfulness muscle. And we do that by practicing mindfulness. And so ways in which we can practice mindfulness, a lot of people think that's just meditation. It does not have to be meditation. Meditation is a powerful way to build your ability to be in the present moment and to be kind of in consciousness in a way that maybe some of us aren't used to kind of moving through the world through. But we can also do it by just practicing focusing on our senses throughout the day. So one of the things, like this is a funny example, but I use one of those face brushes to wash my face. And if I'm not mindful, I have zero idea of how many beeps, because it beeps every time I change zones. So I practice when I'm washing my face, trying to make sure that, okay, this is the beep one, this is beep two, this is, and following that pattern. And I can tell that it is challenging for me to make it through all 5 zones, like knowing where that is on certain days. But the more I can practice that activity, the more I'm building that mindfulness muscle. When I'm going for a walk, instead of just kind of being out in la la land or being checked into my headphones, like being able to pay attention to what my feet feel like as they're hitting the ground and just focusing on that over and over and over again. Those are ways in which we can practice mindfulness in the activities that we're already doing. Also, I frequently will encourage clients to just put like 3 or 4 times a day on their phone, like a little alarm that goes off. Just pause and check in. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? Just pause and check in. Anytime we do that, we're coming back to the present moment. So I think that that's a big part of what can we do about this.
Yeah, I agree. So like even because a lot of when we're reaching for food and things, it's like it does happen a little bit on the subconscious level. We can almost do these things automatically. But even the act of like, okay, like how many times you open the fridge and then you're like, hi, I opened the fridge and I'm looking in here. I didn't even like really think about doing that, but I'm here. But then that's fine. But now you've caught yourself and actually close the fridge, step back for a bit and just pause. Be like, what am I doing? How am I feeling? This kind of intentional, just being intentional with your actions and at least giving yourself the opportunity to identify that and be aware of what's happening. And then that's the only time you kind of get an opportunity to make a change. So it does all come back to being more mindful. And it's something that affects every aspect of our lives, but especially this one when it comes to these habits around food.
Yeah, it's a funny concept. I mean, I used to steer away from funny enough, I would steer away from it, like talking about it with clients, because I know that there is a reservation to making space to practice this. But I think again, if you can just start with the everyday activities that you're doing and trying to embody like a presence in those activities, it makes it easier, more accessible, and something maybe that we don't need to have as much resistance to. If we can build up to meditation, and I feel like the better we get at being mindful throughout our days, the more curious we are about what meditation can do for us too. Like it becomes more sexy, if you will. I think also, just developing good stress management techniques is part of the solution here too. Being able to, be in tune with our emotions and fully process those emotions. I think those are all pieces of the equation here, and how do we address like this tendency to just indulge in what isn't necessarily aligned with our values in those moments.
So stress management principles that aren't around food, and obviously one of the ones we know works very well and is proven and studied extensively and everyone knows about is to go and be physically active. We know reduces cortisol. We know if it's challenging enough, releases a lot of these feel-good hormones, including dopamine during the task. If it's neutral, if it's not something you actually dislike doing, then it's also called runner's high, more colloquially. But this is a way that you can get dopamine, that you can deal with stress. But yeah, it means exploring what kind of exercise do I enjoy? Is it walking with a friend? Is it group classes? For me, like, I can't go to the gym and train by myself. It's awful. I won't do anything. I just kind of walk around and listen to a podcast and I'm waiting for an hour to go by and I don't do anything. Whereas if I go to a group class, like, I'm pushed, it's fun, there's a social aspect. I come home from that and, chances are I'm not even hungry yet, because for whatever reason, my brain had a lot of stimulation there. And the really important thing about this is why, like, a lot of people like playing golf, we think about different sports, but just exercising quite hard, is that when you get into the zone where, hey, this is challenging for me, you can only think about what you're doing at that time, which is now a form of mindfulness meditation, if you want. But you literally, it's so challenging that, if I'm doing burpees, all I think about is like, oh, it's this one, like number 3, number 4. Maybe I think about what's the next thing I'm transitioning to. But and I'm like, why do I enjoy this? It's like, this is punishment for myself. Well, hang on a minute. For that hour, I didn't think about work. I didn't think about any problems in my life because I couldn't. I was suffering here in the moment. But being in the moment and that suffering was actually the nicest thing in my day.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Exercise is such a powerful way. I think other like things as far as stress management techniques is making time for relaxation as well. And actually exercise is a form of relaxation. Like, we do know that. But we also need sometimes more formal practices of relaxation. We've been talking about this a lot on the calls lately, I feel like. But if we can, mindfulness is a way of relaxing, actually, because it simplifies life, right? Like, in that moment, you aren't, like you said, dealing with all of the stressors. You're just in this moment. And so other kind of formal practices, diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, those are things that we can kind of incorporate if we know that the holiday season is going to be stressful for us. I think this is a great way to kind of preventatively, hopefully, keep our body as close to homeostasis as we can. I think other practices include just kind of cognitive flexibility, like commit to kind of coming in with flexibility into the equation, like bring that in. I'm not articulating myself super well there, but, be willing to find alternative perspectives, be willing to, again, fully process those emotions. And then I think, be willing to, effectively communicate too. Like, part of stress management. And I remember the first time I was kind of reading about this, I was like, oh, effective communication is part of stress management. But of course it is, right? Like, what becomes so stressful is when I cannot articulate that I have a boundary that I need to kind of honor in this moment. Like, then I become, not only am I stressed that I didn't do it, but I'm upset with myself, and it just kind of spirals from there. So being able to have the skills to really communicate effectively, so that I'm making space for my needs and for your needs. And I'm willing to compromise, and I'm willing to be heard, but I'm also willing to listen. Like, we want to be able to strike that fine balance. And then, always kind of keeping our problem solving mind engaged. I think what happens is, a lot of time is we underestimate our ability to solve a problem, or to manage our emotions in a particular moment, or to be resilient in the face of temptation. And if we can really begin to build our fundamental belief in our ability to problem solve in those moments, we're just better equipped to walk through the process and come out the other end with having made more what I would call towards moves. Like, anytime I take actions that align with my values, that's a towards move that needs to be honored and celebrated. That keeps motivation alive. Anytime I make an away move, I'm going to make away moves. That's, like we talked about, perfection. Like, nobody only makes towards moves. We would not be human if that was what we were doing. But, let it be what it was, and then make another towards moves. Know that you have 1,000 more opportunities to make towards moves after Thanksgiving and Christmas are over. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. It sounds complex because there's so many. I think it's just so much to talk about because there's so many ways to go at it, but you just got to start with one thing and build upon it. Let's wrap it up here. So some of the comments that I saw that were relevant was kind of like this one, like, yeah, finding a hobby or something that you enjoy. That's also a way your brain gets dopamine. It doesn't just get it from food or alcohol and things. It's the purpose of the dopamine is to reward that behavior. Now we just want to make sure we're engaging in behaviors that, because the brain doesn't know what's good and what's not. It's like ones and zeros. It's like, will this help me survive? Yes. Or is it scary and I'm going to die? Bad. So it's like we want to do habits that spike the dopamine, but are actually you're aware if these are in line with your goals. Is this good for me or not? So thinking about that, and that often means trying different hobbies, different things. Lauren's put here, I knit, crochet, and spin and weave. See, like that would not provide me dopamine, Lauren, but it does for you. Fantastic, right? You got to find what's going to work for you. I like to ride with cycling group. Well, yeah. If you're burning 1,000 calories, you're gonna be hungry after, even if you have your rider's high, because that's a lot. Amy, I'm going to put towards moves on a reminder bracelet. Ooh,
I love that.
Lovely. One other thing quickly, just why I thought about it. If you guys want to practice mindfulness, this is something I've been doing recently, is to, you could, for starters, you could set a boundary with yourself, and it doesn't have to be like forever, not even a month. You could do it for a week. Is that you're not, you don't eat while you watch television, because now you're doing two dopamine things at once, and you're making them, your brain is starting to wire itself that they belong together. And like the brain is like, it's as crazy, like amazing as it is ones and zeros. Okay. So it starts to think that if you start to watch the TV, that subconsciously you're like, why you start producing saliva, like, well, I need to eat this sweet thing or whatever it is I have. So that's important. That's a really good habit to practice, that actually when I watch TV, I don't eat anything. And on the flip side, when you eat, all you can do is eat. It's freaking boring. I do it now, especially when I eat by myself, right? If I'm not eating with someone else, of course, like if you can eat with someone, that's important. It has social value as well. But when I eat dinner by myself, I'm just staring at the oven clock and like eating my meal. It's just quiet. I mean, you could probably have music on, but it actually makes me think about what I'm eating. And as silly as that sounds, that is human, and that's good, and it makes the food more enjoyable, and I believe you're less likely to, like, you get more dopamine from it because you are actually mindful of the task you're implementing, and eating is pleasurable. That's one of the things the brain is wired to do, because we need to keep eating to survive, obviously. So it likes food. So if you are mindful in that process, it will help you later on in the day, for example, to not have those cravings as much. I'm sure there's studies that have already looked at this, but absolutely, if you want to practice mindfulness first, eating without any other stimulus, because eating is actually a stimulus. And if I think about, like, when I go on hiking or trekking trips that are very long and we're like exhausted, and then we eat, like no one talks, there's nothing on, and we're just eating, and it is so enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Whereas back at home in my normal life, that would be super boring. But it's like, because the environment's different, and actually your brain does find just eating and focusing on that enjoyable, and it's good for you to practice that habit. So I would start with that one.
Definitely. My understanding too is that your brain can fully register what you're eating if you're not tuned into the TV as well, and like you're just focusing on. My favorite thing to do, because I also find it very boring, but I'm also a really fast eater, is to just try to focus on how much I'm chewing when I'm by myself. I can't do it when there's the distraction of other people in the room, but to just really count, like, am I really chewing this? Like, I mean, I think we're supposed to chew our food significantly more than, I mean, I probably chew it twice and then swallow. So like being able to just sit and be like, okay, can I chew 15 times before can I take it to 20? So I play little games with myself in the moment to keep myself entertained when it is just me and my food, and I'm trying to be mindful.
Yeah, it's a good practice. You're going to eat slower that way, and we all do need to slow. We need to slow down in every aspect. That's obvious.
So
all right, let's wrap it up. Thank you, guys. I hope you found this useful and enjoyable, and hopefully we've answered the questions, loosely. Tips to handle holiday eating without missing out. I think so. It's very much a perspective shift around. I think from it depends on who's asking and what context, right? But hopefully we've talked about that. And then why we want to reward ourselves and kind of what we can do to start improving that aspect. Yeah. So, thank you, everyone. And if you have got any questions, you can leave a comment or you can send me a message. Okay. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was fun.